Radio frequency radiation. Cell phones emit low levels of this form of radiation every time you use them. And it's not just your brain that may be in danger. Doctors are also concerned that in the heaviest users, cell phone radiation may even increase their risk for cancer of the salivary glands. Until recently, the level of radiation from cell phones was considered safe. But these new findings are sounding an alarm you can't ignore. The good news? You can lower your risk of exposure to radiation right now, if you know what to do. Let's get right to those new findings. Joel Moskowitz is a research scientist who looked at all the studies. Joel, what I don't quite get is why we have so many studies that show that cell phones are fine. What was so alarming to you when you look at these new studies?
I was part of a team of researchers from South Korea and California, and we reviewed 23 studies that looked at the association between tumors and mobile phone use, and that includes cordless phones, by the way, that you have in your home or office, as well as cell phones in some of these studies. And when you look overall, you don't see any relationship between phone use and tumor risk. However, when you partition the data, and we reanalyze the data from these studies, and you look at either the higher quality studies in terms of the methods they use, or you look at the longer term use studies, those who've used 10 years or more, you find significant increased risk of tumors among, in both of those sets of studies.
Well, I was worried about this data when it started to accumulate. I thought we should tackle it. One man and his family are convinced his cell phone caused his tumor. Take a look at this.
Alan and I have known each other since high school. We've been married for 30 years. About 8 years ago, his personality started to change drastically.
I remember my dad just always being happy. He loved his work, he loved his family, but he definitely became just a little different. No one knew what was wrong. No one ever said it could be a brain tumor.
The first time I had any realization about the tumor was when I had a grand mal seizure. They said they felt they got it all, but the reality is they take out what they could see. I feel it was a death sentence. I never know when I'm going to go in to get an MRI and they're going to tell me it's grown back.
Anyone who knows my dad knows that he talks on his cell phone all the time. Since I was little, I remember we went to Mexico once and he had his secretary FedEx him his cell phone because he had forgot it.
The doctors never told me what the cause is. That's something that I had to go and explore. I use my cell phone about 2,000 minutes a month. So you take that over 20 years, I think that's like 10,000 hours. And I always had it on the right side of my head, up against my head, and tumor was on the right side. I'm very angry, frustrated, and anxious. I don't know how long I'm going to live. I'm angry that the cell phone industry didn't warn me. If they had put a warning label on, they would have saved me from what I'm going through.
The fact that he won't be here when I'm older is awful. He's my dad, he's my favorite person. Every day I have to think about, well, my dad might not be here when I'm older. Sitting at my brother's wedding, I thought about that when he was walking down the aisle, and I want him to walk me down the aisle. It's weird that cell phones could be the cause of this because I use my cell phone every day, all day, and if they are killing people, something needs to be done about it.
You okay?
Thank you.
How are you feeling, Alan?
Well, a lot better than last year when I had the diagnosis and the craniotomy. It's been a long year. I've been getting therapy, both psychotherapy, drug therapy, and it's helping. I'm getting better.
Ellie, how's the brain tumor changed the man you love?
Alan and I have known each other since we're 15, 42 years. We've been married almost 30 years. And his personality started to change probably about, I'd say between 8 and 10 years ago, slowly. And it was, as it became clear, it showed itself as a grand mal seizure about 1.5 years ago, the same week as Ted Kennedy. His behavior became more and more erratic, and our lives were chaos, and it really destroyed our family life for a long time. But Alan, too, knew that something was wrong, just not how drastically wrong. And he was willing to seek therapy and take medications for bipolar, for depression, to no avail.
Although the whole problem wasn't a midlife crisis, it was a brain tumor.
Exactly. And we didn't know that until the seizure and diagnosis.
Zach, I've heard that you're actually working in Senator Kennedy's office. Is that?
I did, and I used to work for Senator Kennedy, and it was very difficult for my father and Senator Kennedy, two of the men that I respect most in this life, to have a seizure within 1 week of each other. And I at first was sad and then a little bit angry, but now determined to let everyone here know that cell phones do cause cancer.
Yeah. Ellie, I have some of Alan's medical records here, so I actually went through and looked to see where the tumor was. We have a scan, actually, of Alan's head. We might be able to put up on the screen there. And when you do these scans, it's like the person's facing you. So this is a scan of Alan's head showing that white top. It's about 11 o'clock up there, is a brain tumor. You know, it might help, actually, if I just show a short animation, because I think it'll help clarify this for some folks. Because we're, all worried about what the cell phone does. But if you can come back and show this animation of what the head looks like when you have a cell phone. So you have the tower, obviously, and the cell tower is sending a message out. It's saying, hey, I'm here, I can send you stuff. But your cell phone is also sending out information. And what the cell phone is saying is, I'm this cell phone, any numbers coming to me, send it my way. And plus it's telling your cell phone tower that you've got something to say, and it's sending that message out as well. And those waves go through the skull. The big debate, and this is where science is running headlong into trying to study something that so many people use, is how much is too much power? And that's why there's such a huge debate that we've not been able to address in America. To help clarify this, I want to call up Dr. Deborah Davis. She spent more than 30 years studying cancer-causing toxins. Dr. Davis, come join us, please, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, what I'd like to explain to everybody is why we're not seeing more cases of brain tumors if we're using a device that's toxic.
Well, in fact, it's a very good question. The reason is because brain cancer can take 40 years to develop from exposure. So we've only been using cell phones in this country a great deal for the past 5 or 6 years. But in the Scandinavian countries, where cell phones have been used heavily for longer, every study that they've ever looked at where they've been using a phone for 10 years or more has found a doubled or greater risk of brain cancer in some cases.
Doubled? I mean, that's just shocking to me.
It is to me as well.
Yeah. Well, Ellie, let me ask you if I could. I know you've testified in Washington. What's going on among the legislators in this nation?
Well, what needs to be done now is the United States needs to immediately employ the precautionary principle, as is being done in other countries.
What's the precautionary principle?
It states that if the government knows that there is a risk, they don't need the science to be proven without a doubt.
May I add?
Yeah.
It's better to be safe than sorry. So while we have good reasons for concern, although we don't have definitive proof, let's take some simple precautionary action.
Alan, as someone who's carrying the burden of heavy use of cell phones, at least if you think that cell phones cause brain tumors, what would you like to tell America?
Well, first thing I'd like to tell the cell phone industry is warn us. Don't, it's just like tobacco. Put a warning on the box saying that there's the potential risk if you put this to your ear many years.
So, Joel, let me ask you then the provocative question. Why do so many studies fail to show a link between cell phone use and brain cancer?
Well, just as we found, when you look across all the studies, because you're combining studies that have just short-term exposures and studies with very poor or weak methods, you tend not to find anything. The effects wash out due to this mishmash of all these different limitations. However, when you focus in on the higher quality studies or the longer-term studies, particularly 10 years or more of cell phone use, clear pattern emerges in our research.
Well, let me, if I could, because I'm just going to clarify this for everybody. What I think everyone's saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is there's data. It shows that there might be a risk between the use of cell phones and brain tumors. And if that's the case, even though there are other studies that fail to show that, and people can point to those studies, the fact in this case that you have a burden of proof that it's got to be safe, you don't have to prove that it's dangerous, you got to prove that it's safe, means that we ought to at least take precautions. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
So we actually asked the cellular telephone industry to participate. And there's an association that represents the cellular telephone industry. And this is a statement they offered us. The peer-reviewed scientific evidence has overwhelmingly indicated that wireless devices do not pose a public health risk. In addition, there is no known mechanism for microwave energy within the limits established by the FCC, which is a government agency, to cause any adverse health effects. So if I can just translate this and get some feedback, what they're saying is that the studies so far have shown there's nothing wrong with cell phones and that the government agrees that cell phone signals do not pose a risk. That's what, I'm just translating this to English. So I think I've heard enough to make me rethink my cell phone use, and certainly for that of my children. So what I could do when we come back is to try to tackle, for all of you who use a cell phone, what you need to do. So you got to stay with us. You're going to hear 5 ways that you can protect yourself right now. It's everything you need to know: how to use your phone correctly, where to carry it to be safe, and where you can use it to protect you and your family. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Researchers are warning us about cell phones and a possible link to brain cancer. We have 5 ways you can protect yourself starting right now. So, Dr. Davis, you got 5 things here. One very practical bit of advice you told me just before we started was, if you're going to have a cell phone, put it in your purse.
Yes. Put it in your purse. Now, you may not have a purse, but you can find, I think man purses are going to come back.
Okay. So, number 1 is to use speakerphone.
Yes.
That's sort of self-evident.
Very, very simple. Just keep it this far away, and you're actually having 1,000 times or 10,000 times less exposure. It doesn't have to be that far away from your body, because it works by the square of the distance away from you. So this is a lot of protection, just holding it out there.
Perfect. Now, if you hold that there, the second big issue, of course, is if you're going to hold the phone far from you and you're in a crowded area. Listen, I know you're going to use cell phones. I'm not getting rid of my cell phone either. This is really aimed at helping us deal with the reality that it might be a danger, and we want to have our cell phones. So the issue for me is, how do I talk to someone when I'm in a crowded area? And I think this idea of using a wired headset piece like this makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, what about these wireless setups, these things?
Well, they actually give you less exposure into your ear. But the problem is, if you have it in your pocket, then you're getting exposure to your bone marrow at the same time that you're minimizing exposure to your head. Yeah. So we really don't recommend, particularly for young men, to keep a phone in the pocket, because there have been a number of studies that have found reduced sperm count in men who have the phone in their pocket a lot.
Okay, then the 4th big issue is how you actually carry the phone. Now, you mentioned you put it on your purse. Most guys will take their cell phone and put it on your waist, like this.
That's fine, particularly if you do one other thing: turn it off. Now, most of us, you may be an exception, do not need to be on call 24/7.
Right.
Most of us do not, and I've actually found it's possible to turn the phone off and live a life.
A miracle worker, Dr. Davis. And the 5th idea is to think about using the cell phone differently when you have a poor reception.
Absolutely. When the signal is weak, you don't use your phone unless it's an emergency, because the weaker the signal on the phone, the more the radio frequency signal has to boost itself in to get into the phone, and you're actually getting greater exposure with a weaker signal.
So let's go over the 5 one more time, right? We're going to keep the phone a little further away from us. We're going to have a wired setup to our ears. We're going to avoid using a wireless setup unless you take it off right after you use it and put it away somewhere so it's not on your body anywhere. You're not going to carry it on your waist size, right? Because that's a problem, especially if you want to
when it's on.
When it's on. But most people don't carry off phones too low. What's the point? So you got to be cautious about carrying a phone on you in a place where it can actually demonstrate effect on your testicles, your ovaries. It's very sensitive reproductive organs of the body. And the 5th tip we gave you was to make sure that if it's a poor signal that the phone has reception with, that you take the precautionary step of not using the phone. Does that make sense, everybody? We're on the same page here. Dr. Deborah Davis, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of our guests. We'll be right back.